Yesterday we began talking about the one. The one that you can't really say the one is a part about oneness. So everything is within oneness. And because of this, when oneness creates, it must create within itself. It must divide within its own being. And that is a great lesson for us, because each of us is in some way a microcosm or a miniature of that universal spirit. If we realize that everything that we need for spiritual growth is within us, we don't have to rely on anything outside of us. Even in our quarantine, as we are here in material blindness, and in that reality that we call time, everything, or the meaning of everything that appears to be outside of us is really within us. We don't know what something outside of us means unless we know it inside of ourselves. So when a creation takes place within the one must divide within itself. Now, the universal spirit knows itself, and it knows everything within itself. But when it knows what is within itself, it has a suspicion, or it suspects that there could be something more, that there is potential. In Rosicrucian philosophy, we talk about the absolute, which is everything that is and everything that isn't, and you don't know more beyond that. So when the Spirit knows itself, and when it knows potential, and it focuses its attention on what could be, there is something that in that potential that is not the same thing that it knows. So that potential of what could be becomes the unknown. And it is the unknown in contradistinction to everything that is actual and everything that is known. And as it focuses its attention, the degree of unknowing is gradated. And the deeper one proceeds into the unknown or into ignorance, the deeper the darkness. So the various gradations of the unknown are what we call the different worlds of matter. Matter is spirit that is in potential. It is something that was heretofore unknown, but could have been known, and by the process of the Spirit projecting into it, that ignorance congeals potential and it becomes matter. The active part of the whole business, the part that knows and does the creation, the intelligence, we call that spirit. Thus, it's in the Rosicrucian philosophy, we talk about the interaction of spirit and matter, which is really the interaction between the known and the unknown. And when the spirit projects and interacts with matter, it takes that unknown, and by interacting with it, it becomes known. And this process in the Rosicrucian philosophy is called the spiritualization of matter. But the whole process is very systematic. It is very creative. So that the knowing spirit has a hypothesis. It has a dream. It has something that could be. And it projects that into the potential, into the unknown, And that becomes what we call the divine plan. And so in this whole interaction, matter becomes spiritualized, but the consciousness of the spirit, as it is projected into matter, becomes materialized. So in the Rosicrucian philosophy, we talk about a triad. We talk about the materialization of the spirit, all the way down to this is the materialization, our dead physical body, and the spiritualization of matter, and out of the whole process comes consciousness. Within the one, there is greater and greater, you can't say greater consciousness, one is more conscious. Because everything is consciousness, even unconsciousness is a form of consciousness. So this is the process of waking up. The whole of the evolutionary creation, and when we talk about the evolutionary creation, it's not just a blind evolution, but it is very organized and very purposeful, but it's not an arbitrary creation either. It is the dream, just like our dreams are projections of our character. The dream that is the divine cosmic plan is the character of the universal spirit that does the creation. This doesn't sound like the love, does it? And so this is a process of waking up. And if you think about it, that's what our lives are. Our lives are waking up. In the spiritual life, we're continually a little more and a little more awake. And so we are indeed microcosms of the universal spirit, because the universal spirit is itself ever becoming. And it is eternally awaking. Some people describe the whole of the change of consciousness of the universal spirit as a dawn. Like it's a perpetual dawn where there's always a little bit more light, and as brilliant as things are and they become, there's always more light. All right? Because this universal spirit is in everything, we say, as we said yesterday, there is a spiritual maxim that says everything is in everything. But now we can see that everything is a representation of the universal spirit in various degrees of manifestation, in various degrees of materializing the dream. And the unity is never lost. So that what takes place in large also takes place in small. And that is another maxim that is called the Hermetic axiom. As above, so below, what has gone before in heaven will follow after on earth. No goods and rejoice. So we can see all of these things in our lives, because each of our lives, one lifetime, is a microcosm of the whole evolutionary creation. We came to rebirth, and we invest ourselves more and more deeply into matter. And after a certain point, the experiences of the world sink in, and we gradually withdraw from matter, and we live a more contemplative life, so that even though the body goes into decadence and it's weak and it's more subject to illnesses from our past follies, we're more conscious, we're more aware, and it's more joyous. Now, this obvious, necessary division within, between the known and the unknown, is a simple binary division. Division is the simplest form of multiplication. And we have a really good example of it, which Eddie beat me to yesterday. And that is something we know very well. It is an egg. If think about the process of an egg, it is like the process of the creation of the universe. If you look at it, one egg is a simple cell. When we break an egg open, we can see that it looks like a solar system. There's that big orange globe in the center, and then there is the space that is around it. Now, during incubation, it is just like the incubation of a solar system. There is a self-defined limit. In the case of an egg, the self-defined limit is the shell of the egg. But what happens in the incubation process is the cell splits in half. And it makes two fairly identical cells. And these cells split in half. And what happens is each of the new cells becomes increasingly smaller. Some of the cells divide faster than others, and some of them specialize in making harder tissue or softer tissue. But basically, nothing, stays within that limit. When the chick is born, when the chick comes out of that shell, it is the same chick that began as one cell, one fertilized cell. Now, we don't see it because we don't have the inner vision, but the chick was there before the cell even started dividing. This isn't a random process. There is actually an etheric matrix of what the body of the chick is going to look like when it's all done. Now, we hear a lot about DNA and RNA, but those are just devices that are used. What really counts is the etheric matrix. And the DNA RNA is just really responding to the pattern for the new body that is already in the ethers. So that is the important part. That is where control comes in. Even the genetic memory is actually in the ethers. It's not in the chemicals. It's in the ethers. The chemicals do allow it or do not allow it to come through. So we can see from this that there is a great multiplication by division. Now, we've been talking about the circle. We've been talking about it in abstract and in ideal. And we find that when we take the circle and divide it, yesterday we took the whole circle as a whole as being represented by one point, where the gyre kept the main circle in just one point to find the whole circle. Today we're looking at division. We're looking at dividing something into two, the simplest form of division. Now this little circle here is the gyre of 2. So that if you take a point on this circle and let this go like a wheel around the edge of the other circle, the point will touch here. And then you continue around, and it comes to here. So that when you have half the distance of the radius, you have 2 points in the gyre. And this is a way that we can numerically relate to the opposition. Now when you have 2 points, those 2 points are connected in consciousness. When they're connected in consciousness, you have a line. So when you have the number 2, you're talking about the line. You're talking about a diameter. And we all know that with the diameter, there is opposition. You can go this way on the line, or you can go that way on the line, and there's polarization that takes place. So we can understand then that the opposition, which is 2 points on the circle, is a definition of polarization, is a definition of division, it's multiplication. Because once you have 2, you have a plural. You have a world that can be many, many. So once we see that division, it's there. Now this gives us three figures. We have a point, we have a line, we have the circle. And from this point, the line, and the circle, all mathematics has been developed in those three geometrical figures. In fact, in the ancient Greek times, they were so strict about it that nothing was real or mathematical if it couldn't be drawn with a point, a line, or a circle. And we ended up with unsolvable mathematical problems, like the squaring of the circle. You could not make the square equal in area to a circle using the point, the line, and the circle. It just couldn't be done. Another one of those problems was the trisection of an angle. To break an angle into three parts, because if you try to make a zodiac with all 360 degrees, you can only approximate. You cannot geometrically trisect. You can get it down to 3 degrees, but you can never break it down to 1 degree using a point, a line, and a circle. I think that has something to do with the mathematical and the abstract origin of order. And aspects or something like that. So, sure. So, these poles are like the pole we began speaking about. The poles of greater and greater spiritualization, or the other direction, greater and greater materialization. So we're talking about extremity, with the opposition that is always extreme. And we know there's another old book statement that says one extreme begets another. If you overdo something and neglect its opposite, what happens is that the opposite makes itself known in ways that are quite ugly. It does it quite unconsciously to our waking consciousness. So, when we're talking about the philosophy of the opposition, we're talking about balance. Now, there are some times that it seems to a person who's living within the opposition consciousness. I live within a lot of opposition consciousness because I have three oppositions in my horoscope, and they're just about the opposite of my ascendant over here on the zodiac, and so it's opposite the standard or the Mandalic horoscope. And so I'm well aware of oppositions. Now, what it seems like is, well, you have to choose either this or that. But if you choose one thing and not the other, that builds extremism. So what one needs to do is develop balance. So the principle of the opposition is a striving for balance. Find the whole of something by understanding the thing and its opposite. So the opposition is within unity. We do not want to be tepid spiritual aspirants. The book of Revelation tells us, you are lukewarm, and I will spew you out of my mouth. But this doesn't mean that we become rabid fanatics that can only think about one thing. It means that we become balanced extremists. We are as firm as we can be, but yet at the same time we are as gentle and kind as we can be. Love is like that. Love isn't always a sweetie, sweetie, soft thing. Sometimes when you love, like with your children, if you love them, you have to help them by disciplining them because they look to you, because they need that form for the development of their soul factors. So we can't always balance. And often when we have the opposition type of consciousness, we look back and forth. Rather than standing in the center and keeping both balanced, we go to one side, then we go back to the other side, we go back and forth. And so there is within the opposition a lot of oscillation or vacillation, so that you can't make up your mind and you're going back and forth and back and forth. Now, this leads to very good intellectual understanding. You can see it from this side, you can see it from this side, and opposition people make good mediation people. They make, because they can see both poles, they are very helpful in that way. Now you can see all of the things we've been talking about, indecision, or going back and forth, and coming to know things by seeing the extremes of it. All of those are mercurial things. Mercury is the delineator. If somebody has a mercurial sign rising or Mercury's rising, they're like a line. They're tall and skinny. And so we have that kind of consciousness. But it doesn't always finalize. You might say the opposition is like the Congress of the United States, because they're supposed to act on something and they have a fact-finding committee. And they send the fact-finding committee out, and they don't know anything. So what they do is they hire consultants. And the consultants present them with all of this data, and they organize it in a political fashion. They present it to Congress, and Congress still can't make up its mind. And it says, we need more data. And so they make another fact-finding. And by the time a law is enacted, it's way too late. The crisis is over. But it keeps us from backsliding. That's one thing. That's what the law is for. If we live by love and creatively, we're always ahead of the law. But the law keeps us from backsliding. Just like the famous thing with marriage. People say, well, I don't need a marriage license. I know I love this person and I'm going to be with this person forever. But things change. And then people backslide. And if you are legally committed to each other, and if you are married to each other, the law keeps you from backsliding in such a way that it's harmful to the children. So, like living a life of love, which is living a creative life, you're always ahead of the law. All right, that has nothing to do with the opposition. Now, we just said that the opposition begets, one part of the opposition begets the extreme in the opposite direction. And you might say that this is a reflection. The first house on the cosmic mandala is the personality. But the inward part, the individuality, is reflected through the seventh house. We have a full statement here in among the people in Wisconsin. We say, if you want to know what a man is really like, you look at his wife. Because she represents that inner opposite. And so we're talking about this quality of reflection. And obviously, the great reflector is the moon. The moon reflects the light of the sun, so that even at night when the sun is blocked from our vision, we still get the sun's light because it is reflected. So the moon is the reflector. It takes the light of the sun and it creates with it. It is the imaginative receptacle for the light of the sun. But the moon is not constant. The moon in its own way is as changeable as the opposition is. And for this reason, we say that the secondary ruler of the opposition is the moon. So we have, if we want to understand the basic classic opposition, we look for the opposition of the moon and Mercury, just as if we looked at the classic conjunction where we look at the two kinds of oneness, where there's one point or one in the universe, we looked at Saturn and the Sun as in eclectic opposition, so we're about ready to look at horoscopes now that have oppositions in them and see what we can learn. I hope there's not.
So at least you finally answered the question, which came first?
Chicken
or
the egg.
No, it's an ongoing thing. And if the opposition is like an argument, and with the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And the more you don't know, that means the more that you produce the egg. And the desire for the ongoing thing. The chicken and the egg are cold eternal, I guess.
You all have?
We do, thank you.
No.
Thought that was an empty chair.
Well, horoscopes aren't all perfect, but they do give us an example. The first horoscope is for the famous comedian Roseanne. Her real name is Roseanne Barr, but we just know her by Roseanne, and she's so well known. In this case, we find Mercury at the top of the horoscope in the 10th house, and the moon is in the 4th house, near the bottom. So this is the high and low kind of opposition. The way this works is she's famous for being hilarious, and she's out there for everybody to see. But the way she does presents herself, is she presents herself as somebody who's lonely, somebody lowly, somebody who's homely, somebody who is just a common person like everybody else, like the comfort of the 4th house. In fact, she describes herself by saying, "I'm your worst nightmare. I'm white trash with money." And you can see why she's a comedian, because she has all of these opposite points of view. Now, Mercury is in detriment, because Mercury usually likes to be precise. It likes to cut a line, but when it's in Sagittarius, it's too expansive. So what she does, even though she has a very incisive humor, she uses a lot of exaggeration, a lot of overstatement. She's like an American humorist. We use overstatement, whereas the British, who are much more careful, we use understatement. So she has the moon. It's not in detriment, but she's the kind of person that can't make up her mind about her partners. She keeps having one partner after another, and then never comes to a conclusion. When it comes to arguments, she substitutes witty remarks for an argument. There's no discussion with her, because she can't really make up her mind. It actually takes much more than an argument or wit to succeed in life. A person has to have character. So Mercury in Sagittarius is careless, and it can even be debauched. And with the Sun in Scorpio, she exaggerates, and she lets her mind play quite freely with debauchery. And so we have somebody who does extremely vulgar, extremely sexual humor. And like Mercury in Sagittarius, she doesn't want to be censored. She quite totally is censoring the stage. Now, there's polarization another way in this horoscope. The Mercury moon shows a kind of hilarity, but that can only last so long. And so she has not been a perpetual fixture in the world of entertainment. And what happens is if you have an extremity, like an extremity of wit and humor, then things come crashing down. If you look in the 8th house, she has the Saturn conjoined Neptune, which is a classic for depression. And they both square to Uranus, so that both poles of the spirit, and then between the occultist and the Iranian mystic, the struggle between the two of them both bring her to states of depression. So it's not the reality of her life is such that she's not a happy, human person all the time, because she lives in this extreme of being very witty, back and forth in the high state of consciousness. Underneath, she's empty. The Neptune and Saturn underneath also the hidden sorrow that is there. It's a hidden depressiveness. Staying away too long, so let's look at the next part. Now, the first three horoscopes are very similar to each other, extremely similar to each other. We all have the Sun in Scorpio, and we all have Mercury in Sagittarius opposite the Moon in Gemini. It's the horoscope of the famous Russian writer Dostoevsky. And we have the same characteristic that we saw with Van Bar. Now, even though this is just to show you how things become manifested in a different way, even though he has Sagittarius on the ascendant, and he has this aspect between Mercury and the Moon, there is no humor in any of the writings. There's nothing laughable in anything that he does. He's deeply serious. Now, some of that seriousness is indicated by the fact that there are 3 planets in Capricorn in the 3rd house. That points to somebody that's serious. And Uranus and Neptune are among those 3 planets. So you can see that the hard conditions of the world around him stimulated his sensitivity. The facts, he would spiritualize facts. The way the Mercury and the Moon work in this horoscope is that Sagittarius is the storyteller. And the Moon adds the feeling, and he gets very fascinated by it, and he goes back and forth between thoughts and feelings and the struggles that people have in the soul. He does this usually in his novels with narrators, and these narrators are thinking and they have this stream of thoughts, but at the same time, their feelings are different than their thoughts are, and they are always shocked. And so it's the back and forth between the Moon, which is very feelingful, and the Mercury, which is very, very mental. What happens is he would read newspapers, and he would write stories about little articles that he would read in the newspaper. Like you'd see an article about an axe murder that took place. And he would try to understand the axe murder, and he would go back and forth with the feelings and the thinkings, and with each time back and forth he exaggerated it more. And with the Sun in Scorpio, what happens is, instead of being humorous, he is psychological. And the more he exaggerates, the more it is like taking a microscope and taking part of your soul and blowing it out so that you can see it bigger and bigger, and it becomes clearer. So that when you read the novels of Dostoevsky, everybody can see something of their own being inside the characters in the story, but it's so exaggerated that people can say to themselves, no, I would never do that. And you have the same experience in the opposition when you are a reader. On one hand, you say, no, I would never do that extreme stuff, but at the same time, you say, well, I got that in me. And Dostoevsky was very keenly aware of what he had in him everything that everybody else had. This is a man that had big problems. He was an epileptic, for one. He would, when he would have an epileptic seizure, in epilepsy, the third brain is not completely aligned with the physical brain. And when the third brain would draw from the physical brain, your consciousness is seen into the ethers. And when it happened to him, he would be reading a story or he would be thinking on this model that he would be working on, that he'd have an epileptic seizure. And as he was reading his body going into the pit, he would see what it all meant. Because he could see with the consciousness from the other side. Beyond that, he was a compulsive gambler, compulsive alcoholic. He was a pedophile. He had all of these problems. But the thing of it was, he lived about the same time as Leo Tolstoy. And Leo Tolstoy was a mystic like us. Leo Tolstoy started all kinds of vegetarian restaurants in Russia. There was a Tolstoy society of those people everywhere started with vegetarian restaurants. And Tolstoy was sort of an embarrassment because he preached the doctrine of celibacy, he kept having one child after another. And his wife kept complaining about the sexual demands he was making. And he talked about the coming altruistic love. But when you read Tolstoy, it wasn't as real as when you read Dostoevsky. Because Dostoevsky, when he sinned, and when he could understand the sins of everyone, he had amazing compassion. And he had love that was love for the real psychological problems that people have, the real moral problems that people have. So, with all of these oppositions, it is an aspect of knowledge. Going back and forth, he not only expanded the territories, he expanded his knowledge. Anyway, let's look at the next article. It's another writer. This again has the sun in Scorpio, and it has Mercury Sagittarius again in the 10th house, opposite the moon, in the 4th house. This is a writer of the famous novel Gone with the Wind, which is a story of people at the time of the Civil War, shown from the Southerners' point of view, basically. And it's a novel that has been translated into over 100 languages. And the movie that was made out of Gone with the Wind, despite all of these box office records that have been setting, Gone with the Wind has been seen by more people than any other movie. It was the most popular. So we have other oppositions in this horoscope. We have the opposition involving Jupiter and Uranus and Pluto, along with the opposition of Mercury and the Moon. There are all kinds of things. Now, like Dostoevsky, she's serious also. She's not exhilarated. Now, what she does is like Roseanne. She makes comments about the people in high places or in higher society. And she makes comments about the falsity of it. Because this is an opposition consciousness. She can see the lies. Mercury is a liar. She can see the exaggerated nobility of these people that is really not true. Whereas with Mercury in Gemini, it's trying to look at the facts, but it's trying to be sentimental. If you read Gone with the Wind, it's sentimental at the same time that it is a law of all of the falsity of the Southern aristocracy. So we can see in this one, there is a turnaround. The opposition, all sorts of things are brought to their opposites again and again. In this case, the aristocracy starts very high, And by the end of the novel, they're very low. They've been brought down to the fourth house. Whereas the people who are on the underclass, who are the slaves, they are freed and they're brought out into the world to have a life of freedom, but they don't know what to do with the freedom. So there is in this sort of thing, in this opposition, an understanding of things, but an understanding of things that does not have a resolution, so that you don't know what the ultimate of it is. What the philosophy of this person is, well, there's always going to be oppositions and will never come to an end. This is the way it happens in history, in cycles in history. And during half of the cycle, the right wing rules, and then the other half of the cycle, the left wing rules. It goes back and forth, and this is the way things are accomplished. You know, this is the way we walk. We walk on the basis of legs, which are levers, and they're like the opposition. So we can see that this is what is involved in this horoscope. At the hour mark, you go. Look at the next horoscope. Another Scorpio. And this one has Mercury in Libra, opposite Mars, opposite the Moon in Aries. This is the man who at one time was the richest man in the world. He was the founder of Microsoft. And in this case, Mercury is conjoined to Mars, which shows a very active, aggressive kind of mind. And the opposition is the Moon in Aries, which has its own kind of aggression. This is somebody who's going to be a real doer. And Aries is the sign that rules competition. And Libra is no slouch when it comes to competition either, as long as it has someone to play off against. And there's nothing like competition or like rivalry to bring the best out of you. It's your enemies. It's the people that you compete with that bring a lot out of you. And so what we find here is a mental competitiveness. And what we find in this, we find another side of the opposition, and that is substitution. Bill Gates made all of this money not by being a very aggressive competitor. He made it by doing things in a fast and shoddy way. As part of the race, you know, like if you're looking into a forest where a lot of trees are coming up together at the same time, they grow speedily. They grow really thin because they're competing for the light. And because they grow so fast, they don't have all of the wide branches on them. And the wood is not such strong wood because it's done in haste to grow fast. And this is in competing in the computer industry. If you look at a tree trunk, that's an opposition. That's a pole. That's a real pole. One from the roots to the very top. So what happened is in the development of computer operating systems, he's competing with IBM and competing with other people, and he eventually won out over all of them. But in doing things in haste, things were not really solid. As the Windows operating system, which used to be MS-DOS, is really not an operating system. It's not like Unix or something like that. That was true multitasking and memory management and all those things. It's getting close. It's not really there. But when you do things in a hurry like this with the opposition, you're going back and forth and back and forth, you're making errors. And then you have to correct for those errors. But when you correct for those errors, then you can sell the new version of the operating system. And so with the Microsoft software, he made billions of dollars by making mental errors, not intentionally, but as a part of the development of something. And then in correcting those errors, he was able to sell the operating system again. So this is the way the opposition worked in this chart. It's a very, very clever thing. This is somebody that recognizes that even a mistake is a great opportunity. It's an opportunity to make money. By the way, if you want to look at the second house, this is a classic for extreme wealth. Jupiter and Pluto are the extreme power planets, and you put them in second house, and you have somebody who's usually very, very wealthy. Who has insecurity, it would be tough to be married to this man because he doesn't have a lot of emotion. If you look at the Venus is conjoined to Saturn, it's a good deal of insecurity there, and that had to be overcome before he could be married at all. But this is what happens. It is the insecurity. It is the desire for power that causes him to use the opposition as a lever, and that using it as a lever is what brought him great wealth. Right?
What Aries moon be in this case? The mental aggressiveness again?
Focused on one thing. It's the only planet that is above the horizon, and it's right up near the midheaven. And so it's like a parabolic mirror that they use in astronomy. All the light gets focused on one thing. And so the profession became the one thing that he was focused on. But at the same time, because everything was focused on the profession, then the opposition works back into the fourth house, and he's very reclusive. He has to be alone by himself all the time, and so his is a back and forth life. One of the most famous men in the world, but nobody knows anything about him, and he wants it to be that way. He doesn't want anybody to know about him, and so that's one of those vacillations going back and forth. His professional life was totally different from his personal life. All right. Mary Baker Eddy. Mary Baker Eddy is the founder of Christian Science. Now, the opposition often seems unstable or metastable, and because of that, sometimes a person is not only not sure about the truth, with the opposition there's a tendency to be questionable about the truth or to be dishonest about the truth. And we have something like that here. If you look at the ascendant, you find again Uranus and Neptune in the first house, fairly close to the ascendant, 6 degrees away. And so this is somebody who is sensitive, and somebody you would expect to be around metaphysical things. Now, people who are sensitive because they have a loose connection between the vital body and the physical body. Not necessarily a pathological separation like Dostoevsky, but the connection is really weak. In this case, the Uranus and Neptune are square. No, be careful here.
They're square.
Yeah.
Each other.
Yeah, that's not the point I'm trying to get to.
Oh, no.
Well, let me just pass on that for
Not
now.
square.
Now, often when a person is sensitive, the etheric energy and the whole soul power of the individual are not in the physical body. Because a person who is not sensitive, who is completely focused in the physical world, they think the things we're talking about are crazy. Because they don't have that intuitive sense. They don't have that loose connection. But when you have that loose connection, you're aware of the spiritual worlds, but you are also physically more vulnerable. Max Heindel tells us frequently that if we're growing spiritually, we have to expect that we're going to have illnesses. Part of the reason that we're going to have illnesses is because we're trying to discharge destiny from past lives. Another reason we're likely to have illnesses is for us to become more compassionate. And another reason is, like the reason here, because of our sensitivity, we are vulnerable. So in one of her periods of illnesses, Mars in this horoscope is, let's see, I'm not finding things I want to find here. Mars is in the 6th house, and it sextiles Mercury and Venus in the 8th house. And the 6th and 8th houses are houses of health and healing. Death being the ultimate healing in some people's minds. And we have Mars in Gemini, and Mercury is in the whole mix of all of this, and with the opposition to the Moon, she's drawn to mental cures. She had a spinal injury, but in one of her earlier periods of illness, she went to a man in Boston who was a magnetic healer. And this man helped her significantly so that she not only got better and got stronger than she had ever been before, but she studied with him for years. And then she said, well, I just cast him off. And then later on, she had a spinal injury, Mercury. When she had the spinal injury and she had to be in bed a lot, she read and read and read the Bible. So basically what she did is she took the healing philosophy of this magnetic healer and she biblicized it. She took it and put it in terms of the Bible, and she redefined the Bible, and she defined this healing system, and she's, you know, like, you can't say that she stole it, and you can't say that she was dishonest, but it was more than influence, and she wouldn't ever give credit to the other man. And so that Christian Science, as we know it, is based on something that is a, how would you say it? I don't mean a lie, but a fabrication or an alteration of somebody else's work, making it biblically popular, making it, and so that's the way that she used it. You see, there's something similar in this chart to the chart of Bill Gates. You're taking a problem and you're mentally transforming it into something else. And so there is, with that opposition of the Moon and Neptune, the Moon and Mercury, that you make things come out differently than what they were. With an opposition, everything is always opposite. Everything gets reversed. It's like looking in a mirror. Things are in reverse position. Let's quickly look at the last horoscope we're overstaying here. This is the horoscope of Henry Ford. This is the man that recognized the value of the internal combustion engine with the spark plug. At his time, the most viable source of automobiles were steam automobiles. They had steamers. And recognizing the Mars sextile to Uranus shows that he knew the value of electric ignition of combustion, that explosive type of quality. But this is not what he's famous for. He recognized the value and the potential of the automobile, but what he is most famous for is the means of production. He is the producer of a different kind of line, the assembly line. And in this case, the Mercury is opposite the Moon, and the Moon is in the 6th house, which is employees. So he delineated between employees and Mercury's right on the cusp of his 12th house, and 12th house is one of those houses of darkness, and he tried to keep the employees in the dark. Now, the way things used to be built before Henry Ford is a team of people would get together and they would make the whole of a product. And Henry Ford thought, no, that's not efficient. What he would do is he would produce specialists. The 6th house is the specialization of labor. So he produced specialists who would do one task, and then they would pass it on to the next group of people. Now, this is a very democratic thing, because everybody is equal. Everybody has their own task, and everybody has to rely on everybody else. But a sinister part of this is, when you're doing only this one thing and you don't know what everybody else is doing, you have to have blind faith in them, but you yourself are blind. You don't know the whole process. And if you don't know the whole process, there's no satisfaction. We are wholes. We are spiritual ones as human beings, and we want to know, we want to be able to understand and produce something all the way from beginning to end. And that is not possible with the assembly line. But the democratization came there so that one person was no more important than any other person. But that, again, the opposition turned around, because when everybody was interchangeable and everybody was equal, then there was no hierarchy of craftspeople. So it was easier for unions to form. And Henry Ford himself was against the unions, but he had to give in to them eventually because they became too powerful, and they became powerful because of that democratic equality and the dispersonalization, the depersonalization of the moon in Aquarius, and so the opposition turned things around, and you see the back and forth that produced a different kind of consciousness. And so what we have with Henry Ford is the reversal went against him, and he lost all of his imperial majesty. This was a man that could go to the White House without an invitation and be invited in by the president. And this is somebody, again, that took advantage of something and tried to separate the process. And in a way, Henry Ford is the Bill Gates of another generation. And they both use that same kind of principle in a similar way. I'm sorry for taking so long. Let's close with the Lord's Prayer prayer. Oh God, increase our love for Thee, so that we may serve Thee from day to day. Let the words of our mouths and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in Thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer.
You know, Richard, that Venus and Virgo did it too.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Is the moon and Mercury the two most opposite planets?
No, the two most changeable planets.
The two most changeable. Okay.
And because they're so changeable, they don't really have a character of their own. They're both considered neutral planets. Mercury is the neutral communicator for all of the other planets.
Oh, really?
And the only time that the moon has a character that is its own is at full moon. In this case, there is a full moon here.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I read that. I was looking at square to Jupiter, but it wasn't really a square.
Yeah, it looks like it because
Yeah.
of the cardinal signs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Mercury.
Yeah.
Trying to look too quick and keep up at the same time.
So
Yeah.
other oppositions that not be as strong because they're not as changeable and can't be quite as far apart that way?
No, they can be just as strong. but they're not classical. What we're trying to do is get the classical idea of an aspect by looking at the two planets that rule that aspect most exactly. And what we're trying to get is at the vacillation, and the way different people use the vacillation. In the case of Henry Ford, he used it for separation. In the case of Dostoevsky, he used it to expand things, so that...
No, I'm trying to remember. I didn't say that.
Any other option, usually, but this is, you get that...
No, I thought it's difficult to make decisions. If the cast has not been the sun and the moon together opposite Neptune, is that really?
Spiritual factors come into your consciousness.
Is there no spark?
It's hard to know what you really want.
We found it on the street, but I
Oh, okay, so you see this possibility and that possibility, and then you have to try to come up with what you think is right for you. Okay, thank you.
Pretty erratic. Sometimes take a pretty long time.
So fast, and you're trying to see all
But I
that.
did
But it's making more sense than it did a few years ago.